we go. Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing? Welcome to the very first live stream that we're doing here at Packers training camp. It is day one. If you do not know me yet, my name is Olivia Reiner. I'm joined here by Pete Dougherty. Hopefully you know this guy by now already. He's been here for a while. It's my first training camp, Pete.
Forever, it feels like.
Quite literally
Since 1993,
forever.
covering this team.
Pete, I'm not going to tell you.
Were you alive then? You weren't, were you?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah, of course.
Do you want to know? I was not alive,
Yeah.
No. So Pete's been here as longer than I have been alive. So he's got a lot of perspective, he's got a lot of knowledge, and he knows exactly how today's training camp differs from years past. So we have a lot to talk about. Make sure you guys, if you're on Facebook, make sure you're asking us questions. If you want, I'll also be looking occasionally at Twitter as well. You can throw us some questions. Let me just make sure we're actually live here on Facebook. Oh, yep, there we are. Hello. Wow, Kevin's giving you some crap for the cup there.
It was very hot, and I worked out this morning also before going to the field, and so I got very thirsty.
That's okay. You know what? I'm going to give him the pass for the cup, so that's okay.
I did ask if it was okay, and
He
Olivia
did.
gave me the okay.
He did. So I'm not holding it against him. It's the first day. Yes. So thank you for holding the mic.
Okay.
Now that I have Facebook up, I can hold the mic myself. I don't need your services
Although,
anymore.
Can you scroll through the questions then,
I think they will scroll themselves from what I can see. So yeah, we got lots of you in the comments there. Hello. Mark has a question about Josh Jackson. He did not practice today. Sounded like Matt LaFleur didn't have any concern about him long term in terms of his health. What did you make of his absence today?
It was a foot injury, they said, right? And I didn't hear I think some reporters talked to him. They said that he fell on it or something. I don't know what happened to it. He was in the locker room, and he seemed to be walking fine. So I would guess it's not a big thing. Now, coaches always say almost always say injuries are not a long-term concern. And there are plenty of times where they end up being long-term issues. So you cannot go by what the coaches say in these situations. But he was in the locker room. Jackson was in the locker room, and he seemed to be standing and walking fine. So in this one, I would tend to think that it probably is not a serious thing.
So this was a big conversation topic yesterday, obviously. Mike Daniels was released from the team. He's a 7-year veteran. Came as a surprise to a lot of all the players that we heard from today. Aaron Rodgers spoke about it. He said he had no idea that any of this was happening until he heard that Mike was being sent up to the office, which apparently has a connotation of pretty much universally being something's going on. Yeah. So he had no idea. It sounds like any of all of his defensive linemen teammates didn't really know either what was going on. What was the pulse in the locker room today on Mike Daniels' release?
You know, I'm sure the guys were surprised, and I think Ryan Wood was asking a lot of guys about that, so he'll have a note or a story that you guys might want to get to when it's posted this afternoon. I don't know if you were surprised. I have to admit that I was. I figured once he got through, the off-season practices, because Tom Silverstein actually was all over this last March. He wrote a column saying that this was a possibility. Once they got through the off-season stuff, I figured that Daniels was here to stay, but it makes sense that they waited till signing Lowry, because if they had held on to Daniels, or if they had cut Daniels, then Lowry would have had more leverage in contract negotiations. It might have cost them more money. So I'm sure that's why they hung on to him, is to make sure they got the deal done. Otherwise, it might have cost them $1 million or $2 million more a year, for all we know. That's a lot of money. So in that sense, it's not a surprise. But I still thought, the one thing I thought they had going for them with their pass rush was, because they don't have a single guy who's like a Von Miller, someone you have to just, J.J. Watt, you got to stop this guy. They don't have a guy like that. But they had probably like 6 guys that I thought they could rotate regularly, keep fresh rushers on the field a lot. And Daniels was one of those guys, at least with the way I was thinking. So that takes one of those guys out. Plus, if there are injuries, he was a good player. So if there are injuries, they can end up missing or regretting him. But they do save a lot of money. And because you can carry over cap money, it's not like they're just saving the money this year. Even if they use some of it on Kenny Clark, they'll still be left over. Maybe they'll use $5 million of that on Kenny Clark. There'll still be a couple more million that'll carry over to next year, and some of that money might carry over to the next year and the next year. So there's an ongoing money savings there too. So that's the call they made, and I don't know what your opinion on it is. I'm still not sure whether it was the smart thing to do or not. I do wonder if they are going to regret it in the season when injuries hit. But I see why they did it, and it's one of those gray area calls, and they, maybe they might have had real concerns about him getting. I think he's missed like 8 games in the last 2 seasons. They may just be really concerned that he's just going to be hurt a lot, and once guys are getting hurt, their value goes way down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's going to take some time to see how this is going to shape out, mainly because, again, you said it, depth is a huge concern on the defensive line. It's a concern just in the defense in general, making sure you have that depth, and it played a huge role last year when Montravius Adams and Tyler Lancaster stepped up and took some of the snaps when Kenny Clark was out, when Mike Daniels was out as well. It's going to be a little bit interesting to see if they're going to fill that hole with someone. Is that someone Kingsley Keke? Is it too early for him?
They can't know that right now, right? I mean, they haven't seen the guy play a snap in pads, so I don't. He may be a good player, and he may help them this year, but I don't see how they can count on that.
Mark says he would like to see Mo Wilkerson brought back to fill Mike Daniels' spot. Has that ship sailed? Is that still a possibility?
I don't know for a fact. I'm thinking that ship has sailed. When he played last year, I thought he was a disappointment, and he suffered a really serious ankle injury. I think he's 30 now, or about to turn 30. So he's in decline. Lowry was the better player between the two before Wilkerson got hurt. So, he does have the length that they like. I mean, he's 6'5", 6'6" guy. But I'm guessing that unless they get hit with some injuries during the season, that Wilkerson's not someone they're going to bring in.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you the mic in a second. I'm going to ask you a question first so I can get this hair out of my mouth. Someone had asked about Dexter Williams. Again, it sounds like whatever Matt LaFleur did say exactly what it was.
I've forgotten too already.
Here, hold this. I'm actually going to look it up because I know where that is. But, and I'm sure this is annoying you more than it's annoying me, having to watch me with my hair in my face. But it sounds like Matt LaFleur was saying he's not worried about the long-term health of any of the guys that were not active today, which also included Mason Crosby, Darnell Savage, I do recall, had
wisdom teeth.
Wisdom teeth. Yeah. He's the terminology that Matt LaFleur used was tooth.
Yeah.
So tooth injury.
That's the first tooth injury I
Have
can
you
remember.
ever heard of that?
Yeah.
I haven't. We had Darnell Savage, in addition to Dexter Williams and Josh Jackson and Mason Crosby. Those were the 4 from today, and I'll pull that up right now, what exactly those were, just so you guys know if you haven't seen it. So everything else going on. Vincent is asking about Josh Jones working in sub package as an inside linebacker.
Yeah.
It sounds like they really gave him a full load today, even though he missed a good chunk of all of OTAs and minicamp. What does that say about what his spot on this team is?
So I was trying to figure that out because with Savage not practicing, because Savage has been a starter all offseason, they haven't messed around with that. They just stuck him back there. He didn't go today. So Raven Green replaces him at starting safety. In the offseason stuff, Green was playing as the inside linebacker when they went small in their nickel with a safety at inside linebacker. So now with Green back at safety, Jones played. But Jones wasn't here for the offseason stuff. So it's hard to know if who's ahead, Green or Jones, in that, how they stack that on their depth chart. But I would sure think, it's pretty obvious that Jones's best chance of getting on the field much will be at an inside linebacker. It's just as a deep safety, he struggles back there. He blows assignments. He's just a better guy in the box and going and getting the football. And it'll be really interesting whether he makes this team, whether they decide to trade him, which he's asked for, how that works out. He struggled on defense. He was a pretty good special teams player last season for him in coverage.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see what the Josh Jones, Raven Green situation, how that pans out, especially once Darnell Savage gets back. Jeffrey wants to know how long will Savage be out because of his wisdom teeth. It sounds like it's not going to be very long.
LaFleur said yesterday at his press conference that he thought he'd be able to go today, so that suggests, Savage will be practicing, you would think, tomorrow, what's today, Thursday, for Saturday by the latest. Yeah, every day's the same now.
Sure.
For the next 2 weeks, every day's the same.
Yes, just to update you all. So Dexter Williams was out with an illness of some sort, ambiguous there. Mason Crosby had a calf injury. Darnell Savage with the tooth injury and Josh Jackson with a foot injury. So if you missed that, if you're not following us on all of our social media, we do live tweet these practices. They have been allowing us to. I don't know if in years past that's been okay.
Yeah.
But I know during practices, not necessarily training camp last year under Mike McCarthy, that was not.
Yeah,
okay.
in the regular season you can't do it, but in training camp you can, because training camps have to be open to media.
All right, cool. So there you go. Now you know. Now I know. Peter, please, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is from the Czech Republic. Hello.
Oh, wow.
What time is it
How
in
cool.
the Czech Republic?
Yeah.
That must be
about 7 or 8 hours ahead,
you're
probably
ahead
8
of us.
hours, I would guess.
How did touchdown Jesus look today? Did he stand out to you at all? He didn't stand out a whole lot to me.
He did catch one in a red zone drill. He caught a really quick slant for a touchdown. They didn't do a ton of team stuff today. They usually, I would think they'll do more as camp goes on. The practice was only 2 hours and 15 minutes, something like that. That was the only play I noticed him. There was also, they threw a deeper post route to him in the end zone, and he was double covered, and somebody tipped the ball. I can't remember if it was him or a safety, and that ended up being intercepted. They're not in pads yet, so there's only so much you can tell from the first two practices are not in pads. And then LaFleur said on Saturday they're going to go in shells, which are kind of mini shoulder pads, and then the real pads and the real hitting is going to start on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Someone had a question, your name just floated away, asking about Matt LaFleur and how his injury is and how his mobility is out there. He is pretty mobile out there. He's in a boot.
Yeah. Did you watch him? I didn't see him. I wasn't looking for him. Then all of a sudden I realized, God, I haven't seen the coach. So what did you see?
He's walking around. He is for sure. I mean, he was not throwing passes, but perhaps that is not his duty during training camp, and maybe that was just at rookie camp when we did see him.
I'm guessing if he was healthy, he would be. He'd be out there. He'd be mixing it in with the quarterbacks, hands-on when they're doing their individual stuff. Just a guess, but yeah, I think it's the Achilles that's keeping him from doing that.
Yeah, he was up. I mean, he was not on a cart. He was totally in the boot on his feet the entire time, following pretty much the quarterbacks the entire time. So he looked like he was in good spirits out there, probably, like you said, not getting the freedom that he would like to have, but certainly better than being anchored to the cart for 2 hours and 15 minutes.
That's a bad injury. If he were a player, I think Achilles is worse than ACL for players. So that's a bad injury and a long recovery.
Oh, you know what? Not everyone knows who Touchdown Jesus is. Curtis, apologies.
Right.
That's Jake Kumaro.
Yeah.
That's a nickname that I believe our Jim Ozarski coined back
is that
when.
Right? Was
yeah,
that Jim who did
I'm
that?
pretty sure
Okay.
it's Jim. Hopefully whoever, I'm like 99% sure it was Jim who coined it back when Kumaro was on the Bengals and Jim was in Cincinnati.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yes, we are referring to Jake Kumaro. Apologies for assuming that was a universal thing. Any surprise in with the ones? We saw Tim Boyle throwing to some of the ones.
Yeah, once they get into drills, sometimes the personnel gets mixed. If you watch the first snap or two of any new drill, that usually tells you who the starters were. Offensive line, the guards were Taylor and Billy Turner, so no surprises there. Defensive line, Montravius Adams, when they went base with 3 linemen, Montravius Adams was the third one, along with Lowry and Kenny Clark.
Mm-hmm. And Tyler Lancaster was switching on and off with Montravius Adams as well. Will be interesting. It's the new look defensive line, I guess. The 3 of them and Lancaster as well. Last season, Tyler Lancaster seemed to be ahead of Montravius Adams, and it seems like now, even in OTAs and minicamp, Montravius Adams was getting more reps with the ones than Tyler was. How do you sort of see that competition playing out between the two of them?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because Lancaster played the better football overall of the two last season. Now Adams did come on. Adams is more of a pass rusher than Lancaster is. There's probably one of those things. They very well could end up getting similar amounts of snaps. They're not going to play that much base defense. You just don't in the NFL anymore. So they're not going to have 3 defensive linemen out there very often with 2 outside linebackers acting as basically the de facto ends. It's going to be 2 linemen and 2 outside linebackers. So they'll rotate those guys a lot. They always do, and they'll all get a lot of snaps. I'm not sure. we'll know in the preseason. We'll get a better idea of who's ahead between those two guys. We'll probably be able to tell, maybe even later in camp once the hitting starts. And they juggle the depth charts change. It can change daily.
Mm-hmm. William, seems pretty confident that Montravius Adams will be able to step up this season and fill Mike Daniels' shoes, but John and some of the other ones of you guys here in our Facebook comments seem a little bit ticked off at the fact that Brian Gutekunst would let Mike Daniels go, knowing that he was pretty much, he was such a big voice in the locker room, and John uses the phrase, the heart and soul of our defense. Is that replaceable? There really is no choice. They're going to have to replace that. They've got guys like Kenny Clark, who, as young as he is a veteran in the locker room now. Blake Martinez is a veteran as well. They just added 2 edge rushers that are veterans as well, even though they haven't been in the locker room that long. What do you make of that presence? You saw Mike Daniels through his entire career here in Green Bay. What do you make of that absence in terms of a veteran leadership perspective?
Yeah, he was a vocal guy and a big personality, so the vibe will change. It is part of the cycle of the NFL. Guys come and go. That's just the way the game is, and it's a young person's game, so personnel turns over fast. And like I said earlier, I still, I'm not sure whether it's the right move or not. I get why they did it. And, Lombardi, Belichick does this stuff, year early than a year late. Everybody's heard all these things. And the one suspicion I have is that maybe they're really concerned about him being able, whether he can stay healthy or not. That could be a really big concern. And 30-year-old guys, sometimes they break, their bodies break down. They do prefer length, and Daniels is only, 6 foot or 6'1". Okay. But he was still he's a good football player, so you don't have to be 6'5" to be a good defensive lineman.
We'll take a couple more questions from you guys in our Facebook chat. Jim wants to know about Oren Burks and how he's looking at inside linebacker. Is he ready to make this big jump for year 2?
Well, they need him to be, and he had basically a redshirt year last year, so they drafted this guy high, right? The 3rd-round pick. And he's got good length for zone dropping, but he's pretty fast also, and that linebacker's becoming a real speed position because of all the matchups. You got to cover running backs and tight ends. Tough to tell from just one practice today, and that, like I said, they didn't do a ton of team stuff. But this is one of the guys that they do need to make that big jump if they're going to get a lot better on defense this year.
I'm going to circle back again to Mike Daniels because naturally that is a question a lot of you guys are asking about. Where did it go? 1 second. We're going back. Timing. Timing was a big thing that we were talking about yesterday, Ryan Wood and I. If you haven't checked it out over on PackersNews.com, you can hear a little bit more about Ryan's impressions of Mike Daniels' release. But Jay wants to know, why now? Why wait this long? Yes, thank you. I should never have.
I wanted to be able to see your face, so.
Yeah, well, why would you? It's like a nice little curtain. Yeah. You can't, I've been sweating all day, sweating out in the sun. But yeah, no. So why now? Why wait till the day before training camp?
So we talked about this pretty early in this Facebook Live, but the reason's got to be because of the Dean Lowry contract. And if they had cut or traded Daniels earlier, now if they could have traded him, they probably would have done it because then you get something for him. But to just flat out cut him if they had done that earlier, then Lowry gains a little more leverage in his contract negotiations. So hanging on to Daniels probably maybe save the Packers some money. Mm-hmm. And so that's the reason they did it. And it's not good for Mike Daniels. He would have much preferred to be let go before, but there'll be teams after him. He'll still get a decent contract, I'm sure.
I think I saw an ESPN report about him being over in Cleveland, taking a look at that team and what's going on over there. So he's
no surprise there,
yeah,
right?
Someone will scoop him up for sure. Talking about number 2 and number 3 wide receivers, John wants to know who is going to be behind Davante Adams. Seems like Geronimo Allison is the most natural fit at their number 2, and then number 3, it might be a little bit more of a toss-up. Marquez Valdez-Scantling seems like has been a front runner. Equanimous St. Brown is probably giving him a run for his money as well, but there's a lot of competition, not just 1, 2, 3 of the wide receivers, but further down in the depth chart too.
Valdez-Scantling just seems a little more talented than St. Brown. He's fat. They're similar size. I think Valdez-Scantling might even be a little taller, but he runs in the upper 4.3s. Brown's more of the mid 4.4s. If I were a betting man, I'd go with Valdez-Scantling. Now, that could be one of those things where the depth chart could change daily or weekly at that position over the next month. And, I mean, during the season, Valdez-Scantling was higher on the pecking order. And then all of a sudden, over the last 5 or 6 weeks, St. Brown got more playing time. So these things will be fluid, but if I were a betting man, I'd go with Valdez-Scantling as the number 3 and St. Brown as the number 4 when the season starts. Just a guess.
All right, I'm going to put money on that for
Just
holding you accountable.
Not mine. Don't put my money on it.
No, not your. It probably shouldn't be my money. We'll take one more question. Thank you guys so much for all of your comments. We try to get through as many of these as we can, and if not, thankfully, we're going to be back every single day after practice, so make sure you come back around the same time. It seems like all the practices are going to be at 10:15, so timing-wise, this is pretty much when we're going to be available to talk to you, so make sure you're back here. We got Facebook Live up and running today. I think we've got our YouTube Live as well.
And we'll be rotating, right? So it'll be
it won't always
Tom
be
Silverstein and Jim Ozarski and Ryan Wood, a different guy each day.
Yep, so thankfully
and Olivia every day.
And always me. You always get me, isn't that? Because I know how to press record. That's the only reason why I'm here, pretty much. But you won't have to stare at Pete every single time.
Yeah, those poor people.
But yes, last question from Josh. This is kind of a broad question. Will the offense struggle this year? I mean, it's very early in training camp. It's pretty easy to compare the offense and the defense. The defense, notably, they're in year 2 of Mike Pettin's system.
Yeah.
There's a pretty stark contrast in where the offense is and where the defense is and how they're progressing. Something about the offense just seemed a little bit off balance today.
It did.
Not like clearly they've been out of this for 5 weeks, but they're back now, and there may be some growing pains early on in training camp, and we'll see if that translates into the season.
Several interceptions, right? Rogers threw one to Martinez.
Yep.
Boyle threw one to Fackrell. Yep. I think there was 1 or 2 others. It does look like the defense is ahead. I would guess that early in the season, the offense probably will struggle with the coaching change, new offense. More likely than not, there'll be some growing pains there.
All right, guys, you have some more good questions. I'm seeing them in the Facebook chat, but we're going to have to cut it off here. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I know it's sort of an unconventional time, but there's a chance that you are watching this in the future right now because this will be archived on our Facebook page. It's going to be archived on our YouTube page. We're going to post some clips on our website as well. So if you you're not going to see this if you're on our website because I'm not going to post this part, but thank you guys. There's a lot of places for you guys to check out Packers News content. Obviously on our website is a huge one. We're going to have lots of stories up today, tomorrow. Make sure you're checking us out online, in the paper, however you choose to consume us. Follow us on all of our social media channels. We're going to be having lots of updates for you during training camp over on our personal channels, over on the Packers News Twitter handle. So make sure you're following us over there as well.